Welcome. This is Rick Roller again, and we're going to be talking about, in this particular segment, prospecting. I want to give credit where credit's due. Most all the ideas you're about to hear come from a book, and one book in particular. It's called Prospecting Your Way to Sales Success. Years ago, I was in a bookstore and was looking through the business books, and I saw this book, and I thought, great book, maybe I ought to look at it. It was written by a gentleman, Bill Good, president of Telephone Marketing Incorporated, and I thought, I don't need another telephone book. I've got enough of these anyway, and I put it back on the shelf, and I walked away and was looking at other things in the bookstore, and eventually I came back to it. It just haunted me, so I came back and I bought the book, and I read it. Best thing on prospecting I've ever read. I got really thrilled and excited about this book. Changed some very fundamental things I thought about prospecting and fit real well with some things I'd learned on my own. And I called the publisher, which is Charles Scribner and Sons in New York, and I asked them, how can I get a hold of this Bill Good? Would like to talk to the author. And they said, well, he lives in Salt Lake City, Utah. I couldn't believe it. I said, you're kidding, that's where I'm calling from. So I looked Bill up in the phone book and called him, told him I loved his book, and we got together. And eventually Bill came and did a seminar for our company. And a lot of the information comes from the book, and some of the information comes from my association with Bill, and some of it comes from the seminar that he did for our company many years ago. But this will be, over the next hour, a very fundamental, pivotal time for you if you incorporate this material about prospecting into your daily work plan when we're talking about real estate. So, with all proper attention given to those who originally created some of these ideas, and with a few of my own, let's talk about prospecting. We know that if you don't prospect, you die. We know that if you don't get out there and talk to a lot of people in sufficient quantities that want or perhaps may have a need for real estate, and then you don't give enough presentations, you're going to be out of the business. It's just that simple. We have incorporated within our corporate ethic a very high esteem for those who can prospect and do it well, because, quite frankly, it's what you have to do to stay alive. And there are those in our company who love to prospect. They love to cold call. They love to talk to people, and it's something that comes easy for them, and they, quite frankly, enjoy it. They look forward to it each day. You may become one of those, and that would be great, but then you may not. For a lot of us in real estate, we have preferable things that come to mind when we think about prospecting, like dental drilling or perhaps tearing up $100 bills in a cold shower. These things kind of pop into our head as preferable activities to prospecting. For those of us who are in that category, then all I can offer you through this material is suffer less. But the purpose of this is to get you in a prospecting mode where you will find more and better prospects. Let's talk about a couple of basic ideas. The first basic idea is that prospecting is a distinctly different activity than selling. Good salespeople many times are great prospectors too. But sometimes good salespeople, if they get confused in what they're trying to accomplish, really don't prospect well at all. And the answer to why this is so is really quite simple. They are two distinctively different processes. Prospecting is primarily an act of looking for something of value. My grandfather years ago used to take me prospecting. He never took me fishing, which kind of warped my personality, but he did teach me how to pan for gold. And he did teach me that the person at the end of the day that ended up with the most gold was a person that went through the most dirt or non-gold. Prospecting is primarily an act of discarding. Now that's diametrically opposed to what selling is. In selling, we have the philosophy that if there's life, there's hope. If a person can fog a mirror, why, then they're a prospect. You just have to explain the benefits and merits of your product. Let's take a salesman that gets confused. Real estate sales executive who makes a call. And then you immediately get into your pitch about, would you like to sell your home? Or do you know of anyone in the area that's thinking about selling? Or you might say, have you thought about buying or selling in the near future? Whatever it is you want to say. If the person on the other end of the phone says no, if you're wearing your sales hat, your most likely inclination is to keep probing, to keep pushing, isn't it? And to say, well, why is it that you don't want to sell? Well, I don't think I really need to tell you that. But you don't understand, Mr. Prospect. Now is the very best time to sell. And the prospect says, well, that may be, but I'm not interested in selling right now. And you say, but you don't understand. Interest rates are extremely low. And he says, but that doesn't make any difference to me because I'm not planning on selling. And you say, but we're in the mall. We're on TV. We have the guide to homes. You keep pushing because you're in the sales mode. Now, what would a prospector do? A prospector, when a person said, no, I'm not interested in selling, would say, this isn't gold. And you would do what? Discard it. You'd throw it away. Prospecting is an entirely, distinctly different activity than selling. And I think if you think about it, and then you apply this one basic concept, it's going to make a great deal of difference in your prospecting, because what it does is it changes you from the person that's being discarded, the discardee, into the discardor. If this person doesn't fit your parameters, then it's thank you very much, click, and you're on to the next person. That's the first fundamental concept. The next thing we need to talk about, just for a little bit, is that there's an old style school of selling and there's a new style school of selling. Now, the old style school of selling says that when people tell you no, you don't believe them. The new style school of selling says something very radical. It says that if people tell you no, you actually believe them. Where did the old style school come from? Bill did a lot of research on this, and he went to the LA Public Library, which is one of the great libraries in the world, and he found that it was a well-developed system, and even all the way back to the turn of the century. Where he surmised it came from was Hiram, the old pots and pan guy. Because the old pots and pan guy would take his wagon and he would go visit the Ingalls out there in Little House on the Prairie. And it was a real long distance to the next household or the next homestead. If he didn't sell the Ingalls something, he didn't eat. And it might take him a half a day to get to the next person. So you got used to developing sales pitches and different technique-ish kind of things and different closes, so that if somebody said no, you could overcome that no and get them to eventually say yes so you could eat. And that system followed us through the 1800s into the 1900s and has become a very well-developed system. The new style school of selling says that if someone says no, you believe them and you go on to the next one. Because there's a very key concept here we need to understand. The key concept is that in real estate, at any one time, a good prospect is located, not created. At any one time, a good prospect is located, not created. Think about that person on the phone a few minutes ago. If that person could be created, then it would make sense to keep pushing and demonstrating the benefits of listing with our company. But what do you believe the chances are of taking someone who has no interest in buying a home whatsoever and converting them into a buyer? Or to take someone who has no interest in selling and converting them into a seller? It's just not going to happen, is it? You see, at any one time in real estate, good prospects are located, not created. Over time, over a period of time, you can create a prospect. But at any one time, they are what? They are located. So, let's talk about prospecting. You start calling people and you ask them if they have an interest or a need in real estate. You're going to find people that do have an interest and need. And this is a very thrilling experience. Adrenaline's going to be pumping through your body, and it's going to be something that's very exciting for you because you've taken a whole lot of no's to get to that yes. You need to understand that not everyone that says yes is going to be your next sale this week. And that's okay. Some people that you're going to talk to actually do not want to do anything in real estate for quite some time. So what we need to do is we need to grade our prospects. We need to grade them into A's, B's, and C's. Now, an A-grade prospect is someone that wants to buy right now. They have an immediate need. They sold their house. They're going to be on the street in the next 3-4 weeks. They're moving here from Tallahassee. They need to have a house to live in. These are great A-grade prospects. And if you call enough, you're going to bump into some people like this. It'll be very fortuitous for both of you. The person on the phone will say, I can't believe you called. We just got notice yesterday that we're going to be transferred to Denver, and we need to get this house up for sale. If you call enough, you're going to get this kind of opportunity coming to you. And then there's another kind of prospect. We call them the B prospect. Now, a B grade prospect is someone that has a known later date. It's just not now. And this is okay, because you're going to need a transaction next October. You're going to need one next August. You're going to need one this April. What happens is if somebody says, well, yes, I am planning on selling, but it's not till a little later this spring, summer, fall, or winter, whenever it is, that's okay. You found a good one. Now you just need to keep track of them. And then there's a C grade prospect. Now, a C grade prospect is someone that has an interest, but there's no date motivation. It's your dentist who says, well, I see you're in real estate now, as they glance at your name badge as they start drilling your teeth. Doesn't put you in much position to do much talking. Nevertheless, when you're finally in a position where you can talk to him, you say, yes, I am, and he says, you know, I'm interested in investment properties. If you ever find a good deal, give me a call. Now, that's a good C prospect. We don't throw them away. What do? We keep in touch with them. It's important that you prioritize or categorize your prospects, because if you don't, when you do find someone on the other end of the phone that says, man, this is exciting, come talk to me, you'll find yourself handling that prospect inappropriately. You can put yourself out of the business a number of ways, but one way to put yourself out of the business and also create a great deal of frustration is to spend all your time with C buyers. You shouldn't put C's in your car, as a general rule. Who should be in your car? A's. People that want to buy right now. But if you don't categorize your people, you may confuse how you're working with them. A's are people that should be in our car right now. Don't take a good A prospect and just mail them literature. That's foolish, isn't it? They want to buy right now. They should be in your car. It's people you're working with every single day, and you're calling them on a regular basis, maybe 2-3 times a day. These are the people you're actively working with right now. Now, a B prospect, how do you work with them? We might invite a B prospect to come to our open house if it's something that's in their price range. If it's something that's not in their price range, then we might ask them to come by the open house anyway and pick up a list of other homes they can drive by and look at on their own. We fax them information, and we call them regularly on the phone. Now, as it gets closer to their known later date, they turn into A's, don't they? And a C prospect, we may work the same way as the B's. We don't put them in our car unless it's a very rare occasion. We fax them things. We mail them addresses of homes to walk by. We keep in touch. We run good deals past the dentist on a regular basis. Because if he sees something he likes, he turns himself into an A. Sometimes people fool you, and they look like an A, they walk like an A, they talk like an A, but they're not really an A. And you put them in your car and you drive them around, and they'll downgrade themselves into a C, or they'll downgrade themselves into a B. This is one of the challenges of the business. But at least going in up front, if you understand that you need to grade your prospects A, B, and C, you'll be a lot better off, and you can respond to them correctly. We don't let good A prospects drive around with lists on their own, because they might fall into the traps of some other salesman, and you just lost them. That was foolish, wasn't it? But yet we don't put C's in our cars on a regular basis. Now, there's always exceptions to all these rules, and sometimes you just don't know where people stack up. But wherever possible, try to categorize your prospects. When we're talking about prospecting day, we're primarily talking about telephone prospecting. There's all kinds of prospecting activities. We know from our history in real estate and examining what works that the most effective means of prospecting is door-to-door solicitation. Going to the door, knocking on the door. That is the most effective way to prospect. We encourage you to get out and do surveys, to pass out things in the neighborhood. You're harder to turn away at the door. You become involved. You create relationships. And then if you're lucky, you even create a few advocates. You go out door knocking, you talk to 50 people. You'll get one really good A or B prospect every single time. If you want to do that, that's a great thing to do. And I think everyone ought to do this a little. It's hard to do that on snowy days. It's hard to do that on different times of the year, or perhaps you have some physical challenges that you have to look at once in a while that makes it difficult to do that. But that is the most effective means of prospecting. Now, the most efficient means of prospecting, efficient, is to get on the phone. And you can build a good book of business in real estate with less expense, faster than any way that I know, if you get on the phone. There's nothing that can get you up and running quicker than getting on the phone. Let's talk about 8 steps to success. The first step to success is to get some good list. You've got to get the right people to call. We're going to talk about this more particularly, but right now let me give you the other 8 steps. The second step is manage and control your list. Third step is to make at least 40 to 60 calls per hour. The fourth step is to call at least 5 hours a week for 10 consecutive weeks. Number 5 is call at the right times. Number 6 is have a professional, workable sales message when you do call. Number 7 is to have a good professional sound. And number 8 is to be in good shape personally to call. I'm going to go over each one of these steps again individually. First step is to get a good list. What's the definition of a good list? Any list that has a higher concentration of people on the move than the population at large is a good list. See, we can all go to the phone book and call. Or we can go to a fancier phone book called the reverse directory and call. And these lists will produce results. But if you can find another list that has a higher concentration of people on the move, you're going to get more results. It's just that simple. If you work anything hard enough, you're going to get results. What we're talking about in prospecting effectively is to get better results for the same time expended. A working definition of a good list: any list that will bring you 2 to 3 solid A or B prospects per hour of prospecting. Now that's interesting. 2 to 3 good A or B prospects per hour of calling. Are you receiving that kind of results in what you're calling now? If you're not, maybe you're not calling the best list. See, there's a basic law of list. The basic law of list is that the easier a list is to get, the more salespeople have it, and the fewer results you're going to get. The harder a list is to get, the fewer salespeople have it, and the more results you're going to get. We're not just competing against other real estate people. We're competing against anybody that calls a potential seller and occupies their time. The photography people, the carpet cleaning people, all kinds of phone solicitors that may call. And the easier a list is to get, the more people are going to be calling that list. There's another idea in regards to list, and something you need to incorporate into your business, and it's called the look-alike principle. When you sit down and look over your business for the last year, try to figure out where did the business come from. Chances are, if you want to expand your business, you can take the 1 or 2 main sources of business that resulted in actual commissions for you and put your effort into those areas. If, for instance, you got great results from working your sphere of influence, then what do you think you should do to get better results? Expand your activities in your sphere of influence. This also boils down to where your buyers are coming from. For instance, in looking over where a lot of my business was coming from, I found that I'd been doing a lot of business where really I was getting them on expireds that came from people that lived out of state. They lived out of state, had been renting the property out, and someone got a hold of them and listed it, and then it had not sold, it expired, and then along came Rick and I listed the property. I got to thinking to myself, why don't I try to expand my opportunities with these people by getting them the first time up to bat instead of the second time? Getting them to list the property at a correct price so it might sell the first time through. That's how I started working out-of-town owners. Look into your sources of business that have worked for you or are working for other salespeople in the office, and then try to figure out how you can get more people that look a lot like that. The Census Bureau will tell us that at any particular time there's a percentage of individuals that are moving, and right now in our valley it's around 10% or so. What do those 10% of the people look like? Well, here's what Bill found out in a survey. He was looking for common elements, things that you could develop lists from. 8% were moving because they had a child leave home recently. 7% said their home was too large. That suggests a list of newlyweds or perhaps parents of college and high school graduates. Both those are commercially available lists. 43% of the people that had also bought real estate had also bought a car, van, or station wagon within the last year. Now you can get a list of people that have made recent car purchases commercially as well. But you can also use a list that very few agents use, and that's the classified list of advertisements for cars, vans, and station wagons in the newspaper. Let's just think about this for just a moment. You get a Sunday paper. It has lots of ads in it. You're calling the people who may have a Chevy for sale. Now, is this gentleman expecting a call? Sure. In fact, he's home waiting for a call. The phone rings. Oh, good, there's a call. He picks up the phone. And you say, hi, is this a gentleman with the Chevy? And he says, yeah. And he says, I'm not calling about the car. He says, huh? Yes, you see, I found that people sometimes that are selling cars also have real estate needs. Do you have any real estate needs? And what's he going to say? Well, either he does or he doesn't. Now, will most people not have any real estate needs? Well, of course they won't. But what you're looking for are people that do. You see, if you're going to call 100 people, let's just say out of the phone book, how many of those might be interested in having you come over and talk to them about real estate? Maybe 1 out of 10? Maybe 1 out of 100? It really depends, right? If current statistics show that 10% of the people are moving any one time, it means you're going to call about 100 people to get some that are interested. Very few. However, if there's a higher concentration of people on the move in the car ads, you're going to get more people. Will some people be angry? Well, possible, and possibly not, too. I mean, you're only going to take a few moments on the phone with them. You're not going to try to browbeat them in anything. You're just going to try to touch base with them quickly to see if they have a real estate need. Another interesting aside on this is you're going to get people that have unlisted phone numbers. Yeah, that's right. They have unlisted phone numbers, but they're advertising their Pinto or their Chevy. And so what happens is you get their phone number. 11% of the people that had bought or sold real estate were in the process of building or were going to build. That might be a list of lot buyers. This might be available from your title insurance company. You want recent closings of people that have just purchased lots. Or you might try to call a list of lot owners. A list of lot owners might be people that might want to sell the lot, or they might want to build a home on that lot and sell the one they're in now. 2% were recently retired, which if you can get trade newspapers or internal type newspapers or newsletters that come out, a lot of these will talk about people that are retiring, and that might be something that you might want to work on. 6% had originally bought the home as an investment and now had decided to sell. This is a very good list of work. It's not hard to get with modern technology that we have today, but try to find people that own properties and their tax notices are sent to a different address than the property address. Now that's how you found the out-of-town owners. You find the out-of-town owners by having someone who is receiving their tax notice in California, but the property is located here in Utah. Well, it's the same way with these absentee owners, except that the people aren't living in California. They're maybe somewhere here in the valley, and they bought it as an investment property. 6% are going through or just gone through a divorce. You can get a list of divorce filings. It's available from the county and also from district court records. Easy to get. A couple of other ideas. There's the old FSBOs and expireds. And you might also think about calling people that have recently entered into foreclosure. That would be calling a list of people that have had notice of default recorded against them in the public records. Now, once you have a list, the idea is to work it. You want to manage it and control it in a professional manner, which is the second step, manage and control your list. You're going to develop two kinds of activities here and two types of list. The first one is your general prospecting list that you're calling down looking for A, B, and C prospects. When you find an A, B, and C prospect, you put them into another special place. You don't just leave your prospects on your general call list. You take your A, B, and C prospects and you put them in some sort of a callback file. Now, the easiest callback file to set up is just a 4x6 index card with tab cards for the months of the year and then other tab cards from 1 through 31. As you talk to a prospect and he says, well, I will have a real estate need maybe 2 months from now, you put that card in that month. When that month is starting to come up, towards the end of the month previous to that, you pull out all those month cards, then you put them into the 1 through 31 cards corresponding to the days of the month. So on the 10th day of the month, perhaps, you turn to the 10 tab, and those are the people you want to call this day. A much easier way to do all this, of course, is electronically with the computer. It's very important that you have a buyer's book that you keep your prospects in. I've always kept a buyer's book where I'm keeping my A's, B's, and C's in it. And they could be categorized with the date-sensitive system too, so they don't fall between the cracks and you talk to them a lot. But when you go on property tours, it's real important, and when you get back on the bus, you flip through all your buyer cards. Take a look at all the different prospects you're working with and try to determine, is there something that I have seen today that would work for these people? Is there something that I previewed last week that will work for these people? And you'll be surprised how many transactions you can put together by just trying to focus in on a particular house and then looking through your buyer's book. Who do I know that might want this house? The third step, making all this work, is to make 40 to 60 calls an hour. Now, I know that sounds like a hellacious amount of calls per hour, but it's not. You can do it. There's a couple of ways to make this happen. Number one is always have your next number ready. If you have the next number ready, then psychologically you're not going to spend more time than necessary with the current call. In fact, what I do is I pull at my straight edge, if I'm using one for calling, and I suggest you do. As soon as the first number starts to ring, I pull it down to the next number. This takes a little practice because when the first person answers, you don't want to call them the second name. Your eyes you'll train them to look up above for the right response. But once you get used to that, it psychologically really builds your speed, because if this person doesn't qualify, it's thank you very much, click, and you're on to the next one. By the way, that thank you very much, that's just one word, thank you very much. Click, thank you very much. Click, thank you very much. Click. Don't get the sequence messed up. Don't go click, thank you very much. The second thing is never hang up the phone, just disconnect. If there's a flash button on your phone, that works extremely well, hit the flash button. If you have multiple lines at the office, hit another line to get another dial tone. But don't hang up the phone. It takes too long. Don't get phone elbow from rocking back and forth between the cradle of the phone and your ear, back and forth, back and forth. Next idea is to let the phone ring 4 times and disconnect. Now, the telephone company gave us this information, because if you're receptive to a call, you'll probably pick it up within the first 4 rings. If you're not receptive to a call, then you probably don't want this guy who's been changing his oil rushing into the house, because this is the 14th ring now. It must be an important call. Walking across the floor, getting it all dirty with grease and oil, picking up the phone, getting that dirty with grease and oil, and then guess who's on the other end? It's you. This is not a good idea. Let it ring 4 times and get off the phone. Leave no messages and take no callback information from non-decision makers. If it's a phone machine, maybe you ought to leave a message. It's up to you. Don't tell some teenager or 8-year-old that you'll be calling back later, because you're not going to be calling back. And don't listen to their long, drawn-out spiel of how mom's gone to the store and you're there alone and mom will be back in about an hour and all this other kind of stuff. You won't be calling in anyway. Besides, you've got more people on your list you can get to. It doesn't matter. Get on to the next one. Remember, you're discarding here. And whoever does answer the phone, be it man or woman, talk to them, because they both know they're moving. Or at least I hope they do. Step number 4. Call for 5 hours a week for 10 consecutive weeks. There's a philosophy of life, and that is that there's initial burst of energy that we have to put into anything in order to make something work. That when you first start out a new activity, you've got to give it all you've got. You've got to really go for it. Bill calls this the 747 principle, which means that when a big 747 is trying to get off the ground, they taxi out to the furthest edge of the runway, and then they turn the plane around, pointing down the runway, and they lock up all the brakes, and they just rev those engines up till the whole plane is just vibrating. And then they let off the brakes, and that thing starts to move down the runway slowly, slowly, then faster and faster, and then all of a sudden it gets up and it's airborne. But to get that thing up and airborne takes about 110% of rated power. Once it's up off the ground, you can pull that power back. And if there's any pilots listening to this, they know what I'm talking about. You can cruise at a lower strength level from your engines than it takes to get it off the ground. You're going to see a lot of professionals walking around your office who don't seem to be working that hard. My goodness, the calls just come in. They got 4 listings this week, and I've worked really hard and I don't have any. And that might be a little discouraging to you, but you've got to remember that their plane is already off the ground. It's going to take a lot of extra effort for you to get up and get going, perhaps, than it does for them to cruise, because they're already up there. They've already paid their dues. That's something that you'll grow to appreciate. The point here, however, is that you need to call for 5 hours a week for 10 consecutive weeks. There are 2 periods of great danger here. The first is you're going to quit before it starts to work. And the second is it's going to start to work and you're going to quit because you're so busy. Either one could be disastrous for you. Every year we have people that come in and try real hard, but they don't make it in the business. They leave. And as a manager, that was always one of my most upsetting and disappointing things, is that it didn't work for them. But many times they would quit just as it was about to break loose for them. And I would beg them to stay. And then they'd leave, and in the next week or two, the phone would ring off the hook for them as people would call and want to do business, and we just have to reassign that to other people. Don't quit too soon. But if it starts to work quickly, don't quit either. Because what will happen is you'll run around working on the 2 or 3 transactions you put together, getting them all closed, and then they'll all close, and then because you stopped your prospecting activity, you have nothing new to work on. So, 5 hours a week for 10 consecutive weeks. The 5th step is call at the right time. It's true, you can get on the phone and call anytime, but there are some times that are better to call than others. 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., Monday through Thursday, are the optimum times to call. 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Friday nights are bad nights to call. People go out. Saturday nights are bad nights to call. But Monday through Thursday are good nights. Also, you might try Saturday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And the reason why you might try on all these times is because people are home then, and that's a great time to call. The 6th thing is to have a workable, professional sales message. You need to lock in what you're saying. If you just vary your pitch with everyone you talk to, you're going to get inconsistent results because sometimes you'll say the right thing, sometimes you'll say the wrong thing. Figure out what works and then stick with it. Get a script and make the script work for you. Now, a lot of you are saying, oh man, I'm not going to get a script and call in a script. And why? I've had people call me and it was horrible. I could tell they were calling right off a script and it sounded so phony and so canned. My response to that, folks, is you're a better actor or actress. You're better than that. You can do better than them. You're certainly paid a lot more money than the 18-year-old young lady who's calling for the carpet cleaning company. Remember Yul Brynner that did The King and I for years and years on Broadway? Over 20 years he did the same performance night after night after night. And he said the same lines over and over and over again. But each performance was new and alive and fresh and exciting and vibrant. He was well paid. Well, you're well paid too. You're a better actor or actress than that. Dialing in what it is that you say and delivering it the same way each and every time will result in a ring in your voice. It's called certainty. And that certainty sells better than almost anything you can ever try to sell. The next step, the 7th step, is to get a professional sound. You've got to sound good when you're calling. Now, one of the things you have to watch out for is your inflection. Those people that were calling you from the carpet cleaning or the photographers or whatever, one of the reasons they sound so phony when you're reading your script is they mess up their inflection. When you're asking a question, our voice goes up. Like, sweetheart, I love you. Now, wait a minute, that didn't sound very convincing. When you're making a statement, your voice goes down. Sweetheart, I love you. When you call someone and say, hello, this is Rick Roller, they're going to feel like saying, my goodness. When you figure out who you are, call me back and hang up on you. Watch your inflection. When you get your script written out, you might even put little arrows up and down at the end of the sentences so when you're learning your script, you can get your inflection right. The second key to having a good professional sound is to watch your speed of talking. Now, I've been talking on this tape about 140 words per minute, and that's the correct speed, but that isn't always the case. When you call someone and you can tell that they're a little bit of a slow talker, then you lower your rate to match theirs. If they're a fast talker, you raise your rate to match the fast talker. Good old boy answers the phone and says, yep. And you start off with jet speed sales approach. And all of a sudden he says, whoa, honey, it's one of them fast talkers. Hangs up. Or it's some guy from New York. Yeah, how can I help you? And you just start right off. Really slow. Good evening. How are you this evening? Well, he's going to say, I don't have time for this. He's going to hang up. Watch your speed of talking. The third key here is emotional projection. You've got to sound alive. It's cheerful to enthusiastic, and it's certainly not dead from the toes up. You've had people call you that they're dead. They don't sound alive. Think about this. If you're a prospect sitting at home, even if you have a real estate need, and some dead person calls you on the phone, do you want to invite them over so they can bore you to death for the next hour and a half or whatever? It doesn't make sense to me. It won't make sense to them. Sound alive. Be cheerful. Now, you don't have to be a cheerleader over the phone. You don't want to sound that exuberant. But there is a professional emotional projection that comes through when you're excited about what you're doing, and that's what you need to try to achieve. One idea that we might insert here is when you're talking on the phone, how do you know someone is ready for you to ask them for an appointment? How do you close? We're entering into what's called a soft sell world. People don't like hard pitches in a soft sell world, and we're a little bit skeptic as well. Sometimes it's not exactly how many closes you've memorized, but knowing when to close. When do you close? Well, first, when a prospect has some interest. When they indicate something to you, like, oh, I didn't know prices were that high in my neighborhood. See, they didn't know something. That's a good time to close. Certainly would not ask them to close when they're not interested. A great way to guarantee they're not going to let you make an appointment with them is to ask them for an appointment when you know they're going to say no. So wait till they have shown some interest or they didn't know something, and then push for the close. And when a prospect asks a question, answer the question and then shut up. You've heard about asking a question and then shutting up, so it gives them a chance to answer, and you've heard the first one that talks loses. But we're not talking about that. When a prospect asks a question and then you answer, be quiet. Because usually what people have done is they've asked you an exploratory question. The real question is lurking just behind that one. And if you answer it and then go off on something else, they're not going to ask you the real question. Be quiet, shut up after you have done that. Rules for setting appointments, always ask for it. Once you get the appointment, don't continue talking. Get off the phone. If you've made the appointment, you've set it all up, say thank you very much. I'll really look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 3 o'clock, and then you get off the phone, you sign off. If you keep talking, you're going to eventually give them all the information you needed anyway, and say, you know what, I really don't think it's necessary that you come over Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I think you've told me everything I need to know anyway. Also, ensure that your presentation does not sound dull or boring. How are we going to do that? By not being dull and boring. Offer plenty of benefits for your prospect so they know that they're giving you their time, but they're going to be well rewarded for it. I'll be bringing this with me. I'll give you this. When I leave, you'll know all about this. Give them plenty of benefits. And then never act as if your time is infinitely available. This just makes good sense. Think about it. If someone has infinite time available, that's probably a strong indication that they're not very busy. And if they're not very busy, I guess no one's using them, and maybe the reason they're not using them is because they're not any good. Try to work appointments into your schedule with all the other busy things that you're doing, but even if you are staring at a blank appointment book, don't you say, well, any time next week is fine because after all, I have nothing going on. Look at your appointment book and say, well, how about Wednesday? Well, how about Wednesday at, how about 7:15? Or I've got Thursday at 8:30 in the morning open. Which would be best for you? 7:15 p.m. on Wednesday or Thursday morning? Don't make it sound like your time is infinitely available. And then never sound as if you need them to say yes and that you're going to receive any real big personal benefit out of this. It takes a little practice, but it's real key and important. One of the strongest sales pitches a person can do is the takeaway, where you sound like, I really don't need the business. This works extremely well. Bill tells a story about how he was sending out a cassette tape. He thought that it might be easier to make his pitch on a cassette tape and then mail it out to interested people rather than having to go out and see them all individually and talk to them and do the pitch 5 times. I'll just send out 5 tapes. So he did some testing on it. Preliminary test looked pretty good, and the list he tested it on was a Chamber of Commerce list. Since he didn't want to start with the A's, because everybody always starts with the A's, so he started down with the C's and D's, and he worked his way down to Dale Carnegie. And he called the Dale Carnegie people, and he said, gee, I've got this tape, and it talks about our seminar, and you might want to send some people to it, and I'd be happy to send you a tape. And the person goes on and starts talking a little bit, and they were a little resistant. And so Bill said, well, it sounds like you've got all your prospecting needs well in hand over there. I'm going to not send you the tape, and thank you for your time, and got off the phone. Wait a minute. He didn't send them the tape, even though they were kind of indicating an interest, but they weren't really excited about getting the tape. What happened was he turned the list over to one of his crack phone solicitors there at the office because the preliminary results looked pretty good, and they started going down through the list, and eventually they worked themselves down to the Dale Carnegie people again. And the same gentleman answered the phone, and she said, "Hi, this is so-and-so from Bill Good Marketing. We've got this tape we're sending out if you're interested." He said, "Oh, is this that tape?" And she said, "Yes, it is." He said, "Oh, good, I want one." So you change this whole attitude by making it sound as if they really didn't care if you said yes or not. That which is infinitely available has less value. The 8th step on here is be in good shape personally to call. There's a couple of ways that you can really make this not happen. And of course, fundamentally, just don't do it. If you don't ever try it, it'll never work. But there's a couple other things. Be tired when you call. If you're tired when you call, this takes a whole lot of energy, and it's just not going to work. Be hungry and tired. Boy, that's a double whammy there. Or call for long periods of time without taking a break. If you do those things, it won't work either. Those are the 8 steps to effective telephone prospecting. I hope you found them very interesting. I will guarantee you they will work. I've implemented them in my telephone prospecting, and it's worked very well for me. In closing, I'd like to tell you that the people in our business that prospect, the ones that become extremely good at it, have a benefit that is beyond value. And that is that they know that any one particular time, any moment in time when they need more business, they can get on the phone and get it. Imagine how you'd feel if you knew that whatever life dished at you financially, that if you needed extra money, that you could pick up the phone and call, find prospects, and get the money. That would be quite a feeling, wouldn't it? In short, you've got to get out there and see the people. You've got to go out and do the prospecting in order to make real estate work for you. This is Rick Roller. Thanks for being with me on this segment on prospecting.